Welcome to On Top of the Covers, a weekly podcast by Orlove, dedicated to all of, as we always say, creative visionaries, right? That could be entrepreneurs, artists, makers, disruptors around the world, really pushing the boundaries, right? And contributing to music culture in some way. And that's exactly what we do each week is we feature inspirational stories of people in some way impacting that culture. And we like to look at how they do it creatively, artistically, personally, professionally. There's so many different ways, right, to get involved. For those of you that are new and for those of you returning, I'm Matt Gottesman. As you guys may know, I'm the host and the director of the Orlove brands. You can find us at We Are Orlove on Instagram or at Matt Gottesman on Instagram. We answer every text, DM, reply, response. I've been doing it for at least 10 years now at this point. Community. And this notion of that music is really one of the biggest connectors in the world as it's a common bond, right? And so we wanted to open up conversations beyond what we normally have access to. We wanted to talk about the art or the contributors or their missions. And the main goal is to say, hey, there's unconventional ways and different paths to quote unquote success, whatever is defined by the individual. And that's exactly what we do here. So we have another incredible guest. Before we logged on, I was like, this woman is like my soul sister, spirit animal because of her background. And it caught my heart because of just my musical taste coming up. Lyric Jones, she's an Emcee, a vocalist, and a drummer. And I'm going to give you guys her background. And for those that know me will understand. And for those that don't, now you will understand. She's a musical repertoire includes rapping, playing drums, singing, writing, producing, and even DJing. And she does dip into jazz a little bit, soul, and mainly hip hop. Self-proclaimed Emcee, vocalist, producer, and drummer hybrid, which I really admire. I think a lot of people don't understand that we're not meant to be just one thing. And when we dive into all of the different things, especially our work, we become very multifaceted. And that's exactly what she is. So she's already had public cosigns from legends and pioneers such as Sway Calloway, DJ Premier, Chuck D, just, a few people, Ed Lover, Big Daddy Kane, Black Thought, Pharrell Monch. So true artist at heart. She's known for being passionate. And as I mentioned earlier, multifaceted, strives to be indispensable. Again, for those that are listening, how she positioned herself in doing all these things does make her indispensable. And she said once, why not do it all? Why can't I be an Emcee, a vocalist, a DJ, and a drummer? Music is music, and I love hip hop, jazz, and soul, so the world is going to see it, know it, and hear it eventually. Originally from Boston, MA, right? From by way of Atlanta, Georgia. She brought her blended words to the West Coast in 2012, and she now teaches rap techniques at Hollywood's Musicians Institute. And she sees being an educator as paying it forward to the culture, amen, as her own education in music was her beginnings. In her high school years, she was joint enrolled at Berklee College of Music in Boston, spent 3 years participating in their highly competitive summer and academic year programs. And it was at Berklee where Lyric was known as everyone's little sis, sponged from her close mentors and teachers. And over the past decade, she's been on tour with Rah Digga and the Cali Agents, as well as shared the same stage with countless others such as Pete Rock, Trey Songz, the Cold Crush Brothers, J. Cole, rapper Big Pooh, just to name a few. Collaborations list is also long. Some notables: Planet Asia, Little Brother, Ascas, Sky Zoo, Vic Mensa, Blue, Guilty Simpson, Rah Digga, and more. So again, for anybody that's listening, this is like my entire trajectory of music influence. So she's also independently worked with the late Phife Dawg of Tribe Called Quest, Grammy-winning Esperanza Spalding, and for her debut album titled A Jones Street, released in 2012. And I could go on and on and on. I want her to talk about her background, but her dedication and purest love for hip hop and soul has led her to produce and curate many showcases nationwide and events such as Bars Only Live and the Jones Experience. We're going to dive into like even more in her background, which I really want to get into. She did release her 2020 LP titled Closer Than They Appear, so please be sure to go check that out. Closer Than They Appear was executive produced by Fonte of Little Brother and the Foreign Exchange. Do yourselves a favor, just go download that. I promise you, that's all you're going to need to know. I'm just grateful to have her here. So Lyric, thank you for being here.
Man, Matt, what an intro. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, I always say when we're creatives or creators, we're constantly going. And it's not until like the years rack up that we start to kind of compound all these experiences. And unless we have somebody else mention them to us, do we take a second to be like, did all that happen?
Right.
Right. And it needs to be celebrated. I'm so grateful to have you here. And we're going to get into your background here, at least the journey, like how we got to today. But before we do, we always open with rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Yeah, because we just, the crowd, the audience, they love kind of hearing how you approach these questions. Where does the creative, influences come from, right?
Oh, sure.
So without further ado, question 1, if all music is gone and you can save only 3 albums and only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would they be?
First, that question is so unfair.
It's very unfair, especially with your background.
Okay, so I would have to say if I had only 3 albums forever, it would be D'Angelo's Voodoo. It would be Jill Scott's Experience live album. So her second album, the whole live rendition of that, plus 826, I believe. And the third one, I would have to say Midnight Marauders, a Tribe Called Quest.
Oh.
Yeah, I can listen to that ever and ever and ever and ever. So I can name a billion more albums, but I think I would be good if I just had those 3 left.
Oh, and that's a vibe you can live on for like the rest of your life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I would never get tired of those albums.
And I got hip hop, so I'll have a little bit of everything, some jazz samples. So yeah.
Incredible. Question 2 sometimes relates to question 1. Name an influential person, living or non-living, that if you could interact with for one night, who would they be? Again, this could be anybody throughout history, but on occasion, somebody usually picks somebody from the first list, the first question. But you can just, it's just like you were going to interact with them all day. It could be anybody throughout history, past or present.
Stevie Wonder.
Oof.
Stevie Wonder. I probably won't even talk. I just want to just watch and just sit and just, no questions, just do you, Stevie? I'm just gonna watch.
Right. The perspective he would give, right?
Man, like the greatest songwriter of all time, in my opinion, and just how much he loves the youth, loves, like, still very relevant today and has been cross-generational. I definitely would want to sponge just Stevie Wonder for a day. And I've met him a couple times, which makes me go like, yeah, I just want to just watch him do his thing, how he interacts with other people, fans, music. It's just, I'm in awe every time.
I feel like next time you see him, just say, I was just talking about you on a podcast, and I'm supposed to sit down with you for at least, a long afternoon or evening. Yeah. So, let's set that up.
Let's set that up.
Right? Let's make that happen. Watch it happens. $100. That's how the world.
We got a bubble wrap. Jazzy Jeff always says we have to bubble wrap Stevie. Bubble wrap Stevie, bubble wrap Shaka Khan. And I fully agree with bubble wrapping Stevie. We got to put all types of bubble wrap around him.
Right.
He's doing a lot.
And just, you'd get such a multidimensional perspective from him. Yeah. Because he had to feel through everything for decades and decades. And from a really like a really beautiful mind perspective, you know what I mean? Because he's using so many of the other senses and like just, what an incredible, I mean, yeah, the conversation, I wouldn't say much either, but like, just talk, give me everything you got. Incredible. All right. Question 3, in your opinion, what's the best music focused film of all time for you? And for context, this could be a documentary, it could be a rockumentary, it could be a series, it could be like fictitious, but there's like music very much a big part of it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so you've got range here.
So I don't know, this isn't, I would say, the greatest of all time, but can I say my favorite?
Yeah.
My favorite is the Temptations miniseries.
Ooh.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I think it came out in 97. So I was super young, and it was on television, maybe 3 or 4 episodes, but it came out later on DVD. And I was obsessed with it, mainly because how real I learned it was. And it really kind of immersed me into what it was like being in the recording industry in the 60s, 50s, into the 20s. And it really showed all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, how it is working with a group. And since then, it kicked off a lot of other miniseries. As you know, we have the New Edition miniseries now. And I think there were just so many at the time that kind of catapulted from that. And documentaries are awesome and everything, but when you see it kind of, you know, scripted in a way where you can digest it, I just really loved it for the entertainment factor, and then also just learning about the Temptations. I remember just singing the songs way before my time, and I knew every word to Cloud Nine or, you know, Papa Was a Rolling Stone. So it had an effect on me at a young age. So I would say the Temptations would be my favorite music-based media anything.
Mm. I looked it up just now, 1998. I remember
Oh,
that.
I was almost there, 98. Okay.
Right, you were right. Yeah, you were spot on. And really, those period pieces are always so amazing to watch because I always thought it was good for people to, well, at least for me, because maybe I was addicted to it much earlier on, like understanding how the industry started building since like the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And it was interesting to see what happened in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And you could see where industry and payola back in the day, like how, like, you know, tracks were getting played or not getting played. And like you can eventually see the evolution of how we got to today before in my opinion, the breaking down the system where artists are back in control. God bless. I think they've been in control for a while, but now we're really in control. So
honorable mention, Showtime has an incredible documentary on Motown. Recently, I mean, I would have mentioned it, but it's just so new that, you know, it didn't really have as much as an impact as the Temptations did. But I'm obsessed with just Motown anything. Like that whole machine, that whole era, like how Barry started it, like everything Motown, as you can see, Stevie Wonder was mentioned, the Temptations was mentioned, really had a hold on me. And just learning about it and just seeing how it progressed over the years and all of the artists that came through that and how that affected all genres going forward from, you know, just sampling and everything. Like the Motown documentary was incredible as well. So if anybody wants to check that out on Showtime, I believe, I hope I'm right with that. If not, it's one of them, Stars or whatever. But check out that Motown documentary. It's absolutely amazing.
Amazing. I haven't seen that one yet, but anything Motown is always really good.
Anything Motown.
Yeah. And there's just so much history out of there. So, okay, final rapid question. What's an important book? It could be a podcast. Maybe it's like an Audible, something, anything that helps you or has helped you navigate your creativity and passion.
So there hasn't been anything that's like helped me navigate anything creatively as far as like books or podcasts or whatever. But I have been inspired by one. Rest in peace to Combat Jack. He was a podcaster, and I believe earlier in his career, he was an attorney and very influential in the music industry. He kind of like was one of the pioneers of this podcasting, especially with hip hop, and just getting notable icons and legends to talk about their story. It was the Combat Jack show, and he passed away, I want to say, a few years ago. But that one really, you know, it was the very beginning of podcasts. I want to say he was one of the first. Nobody was listening to podcasts like that until Combat Jack like had Just Blaze on there. And I want to say what was the big one? He had Dame Dash. He had Dame Dash and Just Blaze, and it blew up. And then from then on, I was just stuck on listening to Big Daddy Kane came through, and all types of people just came through and really kind of told their story, which paved the way for a Drink Champs now. Way radio stations are doing podcasts now and having just like real sit downs with artists. I heard Nas is about to do a hip hop podcast. All of that started with Combat Jack. So got to give him his flowers. That was really inspiring to just hear my faves, you know, a KRS-One or whatever, just talk about, you know, a random story from the 80s. That wasn't really happening until Combat Jack. So I am really looking forward to Will Smith's book. I'm not really a book person, but I can't wait to just get my hands and just sit down and read that book because he's such a transparent figure, and seeing how he is a music artist and an actor and you know, just all those things intertwined, that I resonate with just not being one dimensional and having a perspective of all different things that I can learn from. So I will, if you were to ask me this question maybe next year, it probably would be
I will.
I'm sure.
Two things came to mind there with Will Smith. part of his transparency is that he demonstrates this, yes, these are the things I do and I love, but
Yeah.
here's the human in me of the things I don't know. So there's this kind of authentic, like, hey, I'm figuring it out too. And here's what I'm learning in each of those. Like, I've got the discipline and I've built these things, but in the bigger scheme, here's all I don't know. And as I know, I'm going to keep talking about them, which kind of goes back to your point about the podcasting. I got in about 5-6 years ago into it. And yeah, it was like less than 100,000 podcasts. I think it was like 70,000 podcasts. And I never thought I'd do it, but I knew I would do it differently. And the idea was we need to have very real conversations about a lot of different topics that aren't being spoken about in media as much. So I love that you bring that up, because when you start to have these conversations, it connects people even more to see like, wait a minute, they're not that different than I am. Maybe they're more visible in the physical world, but they're not that different. And it's like, no, actually most people aren't that different, and they get to kind of help you navigate, not you, but like the general public, like, here's what they experienced. Take that information, it's not the gospel, but like take that information so you at least have some artillery when you might potentially see situations like that, or, how to help navigate situations from other teachers that have already been through it, right?
Right. They say chew the meat, spit out the bones. I'm not going to be Will Smith, but there's so much quality knowledge that he has, and the way he is willing to share his life. He's a gem to our generation, specifically, us in our 30s, 40s, because we literally grew up with him and watched everything. So like this new level of transparency Will Smith is on, to me, is refreshing, because he's always been transparent and sharing, but it's just really refreshing to see him going on another level of that, and just seeing how he's still figuring things out and still trying to, move with the times and social media. Just wow.
Right.
Will is so inspiring to hear. So I'm actually going to his book tour show today. So nice. I'm super excited to just hear what he has to say live in person. So
well, and in the age of social media, I don't really like to use the word influencer. Even when people use that word on me, I got in before they started using that word. I think there's influencer and then there's influential, and he leads as influential, right? As, hey, here's me. Let's have these conversations. What's going on in here? What's going on in here? And, how do we keep going, right? So you have an incredible background. I want to jump right into it. And the first question, this is the only question that will ever be the same ever in any podcast I do, which is, how did we get here? Because your background is phenomenal. And I would love for you to go back to the beginning of existence. No, of anywhere you want. You can go as far back as you want, but like, where did some of these influences start coming in, where you started to experiment with your life, with your art and your music and your talent, all these things? Like, where did that start from? And then how did that progress, throughout time? I know that it's obviously a very long journey, but I would love to get highlights at each of these little seasons along the way to give context to everybody listening, especially with your influences in your background is incredible.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I like to say, like, when I talk to my mentors or OGs who have many years on me, experience in the game, they cock their head to the side when I tell them, like, I'm a kid of the radio. Like, I grew up from the radio. And luckily, I was growing up in a time where we still had a lot of quality music that was considered mainstream at the time. I was a young kid when the bad boy era was starting to take a hold of our culture. But for me, that was awesome, because it blended worlds. As you read in my bio, like, I don't want to just be one thing, So I was getting a lot of different influences at that time during the bad boy shiny suits era that was considered, detrimental to pure hip hop. For me, I was like, word, I'm getting R&B, I'm getting hip hop, I'm getting these James Brown samples and all this stuff at the same time. And it's palatable and I can sing along. And to me, it was awesome at the time. But I had to do my homework as well. when I got a little bit older and, I was, loved pop stuff. I love a little Bow Wow, B2K and,
Right.
Ice Girls. Like I'm a kid, I'm
Yeah.
getting all of this stuff. But at the same time, what I think is why I'm lyric and what people are really gravitating to is that I was always a student. So it's okay, I'm getting all this from the radio and I loved all this. Now, where did it come from? Let me go back. Let me go back and hear where, I love this Tribe song. Where is that jazz sample? I love this Biggie record. Where is that James Brown drum groove coming from? Like, where is Impeach the President? Why do I keep hearing this same drum groove over and over and over again on my favorite hip hop records? So I always took a step further, and I praise the radio in the 90s for just giving me that spark of curiosity of the repetitiveness in a good way, in a beautiful, innovative way. It's different than how it is today, the repetitiveness. Before, it was just like, it was teaching me stuff. I was learning about all these groups and jazz, funk, R&B groups that Mary J. Blige was doing, or who Shaka Khan, really? So I would have to say I grew up from the radio, but I took a step further. So as time went on, as I, became a young teenager, 12, 13, I was also very influenced from the church as well. I grew up in the church. Usher board, youth ministry, playing drums in the church, singing in the choir, everything you think of church was beat. So as much as I was all up in secular world, I was very much a gospel head and very much influenced by the musicianship of being in the church. So that's why I learned how to play drums, and I learned how to really, really sing and just learn different chords and harmonies and all of that. And then here comes jazz lyric, right? Here comes jazz lyric, which was, I'm not really realizing that's being influenced as well through hip hop. Why I'm gravitating towards these samples is I've been hearing them throughout my childhood. My dad was playing Tribe Called Quest all the time in the car. I'm like, wow, like I've heard this before, So the dots that were connecting, I think just innately for me, I was hearing past what was just being played for me or what I was hearing. So then I moved on to Berklee College of Music, was very, very impactful and instrumental to my growth. I did more than just take classes there. I was just a little college student as well. So in Boston, they have a program called the City Music Program, where you can apply for the gifted children in Boston, I think in middle school and high school. You have to go through an audition process, a rigorous audition process, just like if you were applying to go to college there. And when you get in, you actually take classes as well. And then you have recitals and everything. So it was like going to college, taking theory and learning about all of those things. Those years, like my teenage years, was really what everything started to come together, because it's like, here are all these interests that I have. Here's what my ear is processing. Now it's making sense. Now I'm seeing how all the dots are connected through the classes I'm taking. And obviously just the feel of everything was very much the camaraderie of the other musicians and the students at Berklee. So I didn't just take classes, I hung out, I went to parties, I went to jam sessions. I got to know some of the elite faculty, rest in peace to John Blackwell, who was Prince's drummer, world-renowned drummer. He passed away, but he was a mentor of mine and really taught me about feel and pocket, which is the drummer side of me. And then vocally, I mean, the list goes on and on of just the incredible vocalists that came in and out of Berklee, and just learning more and more of what that was. So I really credit that. And then, of course, the hip hop side was, shout out to my brother, Radar Ellis, who kind of took me under his wing. I can't even say kind of, he did. He took me under his wing as first his little protege and student, to really being my brother over the years, like he's family at this point. But I remember seeing him perform at Berklee's recital. They had the jazz hip hop orchestra there, right? And again, me just hanging out late, I went to see one of the recitals, and mind you, I'm 13, 14, I think, 14, 15-ish. And I've never seen the Roots before. I've never seen I've never seen De La Soul with their band. I've never seen hip hop with a band at this point. So it blew my mind to see Radar performing with an orchestra on stage, rapping, doing hip hop, literally combining the worlds of what I love. So that changed my life seeing him. It wasn't a celebrity or anything. It was just a student at Berklee that really changed my perspective of the things that I can do and how I can just do anything I want to do. So I saw him in the hallway at Berklee one day and said, "Hey, I saw you perform the other night. I rap too." Me too. And I'm, just writing little stuff in my notebook at this point, but I knew that I wanted to rap and sing and do all those stuff. He was like, "Really? Spit some right now." And I did. I just rapped the hardest 16 bars I wrote that I could remember. It was like, "Nice. What do you call yourself?" And I said, "My name's Lyric," which was a nickname that a friend of mine had gave me, when I was like maybe 9 or 10, just always writing lyrics down, always coming up with the lyrics first. And he was like, "Dope, okay." So he's the one who gave me the Jones part. So I've always had Lyric, but Radar added the Jones. And when he told me what having a Jones meant, like just having an affinity and a love for something, he saw that with me with words, music, and learning. So he was just calling me Lyric Jones. So shouts out to Dar for giving me my full artist name. And recorded for the first time. He taught me about 16 bars. He taught me about, Jay Dilla, Slum Village, and this stuff. And now we're entering into 2005, 2006, where it was just massive explosion of just the Soulquarian era at the time that I had no idea was happening because the radio is changing. Mainstream is changing, right? We're getting real bling bling at this time.
Yep.
I'm not knowing what's happening, behind the scenes. I'm not knowing who Jean Grey is and, Talib Kweli and Alchemist or, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
So my introduction to Radar really made me the nerd hip hop student that I am today, and really digging deeper and deeper into why I have the influences that I have. So you asked me how I'm here. That's the foundation. But of course, like I would say now it's continuously, even to this day, just being a student. And I think the Big Daddy Kanes and the Pharaoh Monches and all those people you name, the Sways or whatever, the gravitation is like, yo, she's young, but she's like a young OG. Like she knows her stuff. Like she can have a conversation with us about stuff she didn't even live, So I credit that to just continuously being a student. And I always advise people to do that, with this music thing, because it's all dots that we're connecting, from before.
I love all of that. And not just an OG, but like really an old soul. And you also, the positioning of the people and the art and the influences from a very early age really helped keep you solidified in the pure art of it all while learning the business along the way and all that. And I think that leaves you very blessed, like very, very blessed. It was interesting. I was taking a couple of notes while you're talking. First of all, the moment you said Lyric and then that Jones was added, I was thinking of the movie Love Jones, like, because Jonesing, like you Jones for, something good.
Yeah.
And the moment you said, yeah, you added Jones, I'm like, oh, like Love Jones, makes sense. But just a lot of what you were saying, that the 90s were a very interesting time. I love that it was a golden era because it was very experimental and saying like, hey, I want to add feeling to lyrics and express myself through that, right? So you saw like neo soul, R&B, hip hop, rap, like do this whole like, let's just merge and create. But you're right, like the part of it that got very big when the money was coming in changed mainstream, and you had all this like, but the purist movement kind of kept going, and then you start to see this divergence. So I think massive respect to you for, there's nothing wrong with pop, there's nothing wrong with it, it's all good, but good music is good music. Good music is good music. So, but I love that you stuck to the long game of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's how I kind of look at a lot of this stuff, was all like long game, because it kept foundationally solid and humility and humbleness and forever student. And like, I'm not going to get lost in what has to be the thing. I want to be lost in the thing that has to be that's transcendent. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of how I was feeling. I was listening to you talk about it all, and the part about where you said, like, you know, you made your way further into jazz because of hip hop with like Tribe. And I came from a household in New York. Jazz was on the house all the time, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, a lot of in classic R&B. My parents were just lovers, I guess. And they were just like, they were dope people, but it was always on. And I didn't appreciate jazz as much. I listened to it all the time there with them, but it wasn't starting to understand it more until hip hop. So I understood it because I was like, where is Tribe getting those influences from? And you start to hear it more. I'm like, oh, is that what they were playing in the house? Like, oh, wow. You know, so very transcendent. What happened in the middle where you were like, all right, I'm learning here and this is great. I want to move. Like, I want to change locations. How was that for you?
Yeah, every move was heavy. Every move was a lot. Moving to Georgia from Boston, I moved right out of high school. So I decided not to go to Berklee. I had a full ride and everything, but I decided not to go to Berklee for actual undergrad because at age 18, this is 2006, I didn't really see being a rap artist as a viable like income thing for me. Like I doubted I just always wanted to have another plan, right? So at the time, there wasn't really any women in hip hop that were really, really successful. There was a low moment at that time. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I can still strive for this thing, but I need to go to college. Like I need to get a degree in something else that I enjoy. And what many people don't know, if unless you knew me when I was in school, is that I was a full broadcast news student. So my other love is, you know, being on television. I really love sports. I really love, obviously, music. So there was an era in time where I saw myself as being like on 106 in Park hosting
Right.
stuff or being like Sway. Like I wanted to do radio. I wanted to do TV and interview my favorite stars, you know. Again, that's the learning aspect, just wanting to just get and sponge in so much information. It's like, okay, if this music thing don't work out, at least I can do something. I can be on the sidelines and interview my favorite football players or basketball players as well. So I just didn't want to limit myself. But I definitely have to say that time was where I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm, you know, ain't no female rappers or female artists doing anything. I don't want to go all the way, be a neo soul artist, and I don't want to go all the way here. So the example wasn't there. So when I went to college, I was still kind of doing my thing. I was doing little, you know, open mics and stuff like that on campus. So I was just kind of like this little artist on campus, like, oh yeah, she's lyric, she does music or whatever, right? Still in school, still taking my classes. Still, I eventually joined the big band at UGA and was full on a jazz big band drummer as well. Traveled to China, Italy. Like I just wanted to try and do everything as well as being involved in school. But I still kept pushing. I was still putting out music, still doing shows, still doing open mics. So the transition to Georgia was really kind of based on let me expand the small world of just music, which Boston I was associated with just being an artist, just being Berklee, just being a little kid. So college was like, all right, I have all these gifts, I have all these interests. Let me just go to another school in another place. And I still have music to fall back on because I'm in Georgia in 2006. Hip hop was taking off at the time, right?
Oh yeah, it was.
Radar and our crew, they moved to Georgia as well. I had family there. To me, that's what made sense. But the growing pains and just how different I was, because I wasn't at a music school, how different I was. I felt a little alone and I felt a little on another planet in school. I felt really closed, you know, it just felt limiting, even though I'm at a huge Division I school, it just felt super limiting as far as the stuff that I could do and want to do. So it was a little tough up until 2009, 2010. That's when I started doing festivals, the A3C Hip Hop Festival in Atlanta. And that's when the world started to cross of, okay, here's all these artists that I've read about and studied about and have interest in. Now they're becoming peers. Peer group things started to form around, my end years of college. I started headlining things. I started putting on my own shows. But the market and everything around 2010, 2011 was incredibly tough. Stock market was crazy. The industry was crazy. Like, it was just hard for anybody who graduated from college, couldn't find no job. So here I am, interned out, did all this stuff, and I couldn't find no job in sports, couldn't find no broadcasting internship, nothing. The shows were kind of, it was cool, nickel and dime local shows, but I wasn't really able to keep really a roof over my head. So here's the other thought process, like, okay, maybe Atlanta or Georgia kind of served its purpose. I was at that point there 6 years, did a hella shows, met a lot of people. Maybe I'm a little too comfortable. Maybe it's time to move. So that brought me to California, where I've been in LA for about 10 years. And that's been a whole nother life of its own as well. So every stop was just kind of starting over, but the goal was like expanding. You know what I mean? Like, I'm more than just one thing. Let me expand and just try other things in a survival mode type of mentality.
I can't wait to talk about the last 10 years here in a minute, but there's a lot in there too, where a lot of people seem to, and everybody can do this. I know that this happens, overthink. And, but I always tell, like, if people have a passion, like let's say music, and they're not sure where to go with it, go with all of it. Like, just the ability to move into something and try things out and see what calls to you, and to intuitively allow that calling to take you and guide you without placing expectations on it, or I've got to be this thing. I think the fact that, and I get the whole multifaceted you, because I do like 50 million things. And I mean, even the other day I was asked, or I was interviewed for something, they're like, I don't really know how to explain him. I'm like, all right, I get it. A title driven world, they need titles. Here's the titles, but let's talk. But the fact that you tried everything allows you to find your footing in the things that make the most sense. Like, oh yeah, I can stay here for a while. I can do this thing as the part of the repertoire. I love that you did that. And then, when you were saying every stop was kind of starting over, but what's interesting is it's each stop is steps higher, because it's like, hey, I'm here starting over from this step, or I'm 4, 5, 6 years later starting over from this step. But really all it is like, well, starting from a higher step with experiences that are like, how would I reset? How would I now approach this next season, given the information that you just gathered over all that previous time? So that's the cool part, because I've started over 4 or 5 times. I'm 42, 4 or 5 times. I'm like, but it's different now. I think you get to your for me, it was at least mid to late 30s, where you're like, now it's just about the approach. It's like, let's just take these steps with all that information. And so, but I think people also, they worry about starting over, but it's a beautiful thing, because you're never really fully starting over. You're just starting again, but from a higher step, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and people really, just talking to you and just kind of thinking about how much over my career people wanted to kind of like put me in this like tangible, okay, what do you do? Like, right. You have brand yourself as this and that, and this is why you're not getting here and there. And then you really, like, there's been moments and moments of self-doubt and just being discouraged, because I'm like, here are all these examples of these people I idolize who never did that.
Yeah.
Who never had to do all these things that you're telling me I have to do. And why can't I be the first to change that narrative, right? And then now, what is kind of beautiful today is that we're seeing artists like her or Anderson .Paak or whatever, who are they just do whatever they want to do, and their fan base accepts that. Mm-hmm. One thing I know that is true is that you just need those people and that team that believe in you to accept what you do is what you do, instead of trying to, make you tangible to what they think you're supposed to be, right? especially when you're young. I mean, I was in my 20s, I was still figuring things out. I knew I was dope as fuck on stage. I knew I can perform better than a lot of people. I knew I had a lot to offer. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I'm a good performer, book me. You know, I have great music, work with me. Like it didn't really, all the other stuff, the politics and all these other things, being alone, because I've never had like a full management team or just the machine or all those things. I'm a Black woman in this industry, very male dominated, very much we need to put you in this box and see you this way. I think that also played a part in me not really thinking like, all right, this is just something on the side. Let me try all these other things. I can do television, I can write. And, you know, thinking about LA was like, okay, maybe I can be a songwriter out here. I just didn't want to limit myself. And I kind of threw everything at the wall because at the end of the day, I need to keep a roof over my head. I need to survive. And I have so many things that I can do that can generate income. But all right, y'all want me to do this? All right, cool. I'm gonna keep, I'm not gonna not say no to going on Sway, going on Tony Touch, doing this festival, doing that. But as you said, you get older and I had to establish boundaries, like, you know, like I'm no longer in the position where I'm just doing things for exposure or doing things
There it is.
good look anymore. I've paid the dues. You know, I'm still learning stuff and there's still things that I'll compromise on, but the value, I think I did things because I felt like I had to do it throughout the majority of my 20s instead of doing a lot of things that I just wanted to do, right? Because I was just so scared of, you know, ruining or losing an opportunity or rubbing somebody the wrong way or all these things that is being fed to me of beware of this and don't say this and blah, 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 blah. Instead of now it's like a fine line and delicate balance of I'm going to be me, I'm going to do what I want to do and be myself, but also understanding the industry, understanding the business, understanding when and where to be flexible. I'm not perfect in that regard, but it's definitely like a boundary that I think I've grown over the years based on my experiences and knowing what I have to offer. So,
you know, I don't even think you weren't compromising the values, but you were experimenting, because I had a little bit of that along the way. You experiment with some of the opportunities to almost kind of confirm the intuition sometimes, because that's where we get our lessons. And I knew like my main accounts when I first started really growing online, people were idolizing all these people online. And when some of us were there before the celebrities got there, like I got on Instagram like in 2013. And so we were part of before that and other social platforms before the crazy boom and what we're seeing now in influencer culture. And I never wanted to play the politics. And I was like, no, why can't I do it all like this way? And then even throughout career-based stuff with work, I relate to you on that about, I don't want to do it that way. It doesn't resonate with my soul. And I get that all of you guys, that's kind of the way it works. You feature that person features this person, you get on that magazine, you get into that podcast, you guys get, you know, and you cross promote. Like, I get it. But like, can you like me because I'm good?
Right.
How about that? Can you like me? And can you like me because I'm good at it, because I like it? That's a compliment versus, you know, let me position this way. But but like you, like I had a little bit of that along the way, you know, in some of the earlier years, 14, 15, 16, you know, especially when at least I got featured without I didn't have to ask for it. They just did it, which was nice. But like, I don't know, you start getting around some of it and you're like, I don't know about that. Like, and the people read, and I guess it's tough because I know like when you start to see a lot of the people online and they contact you for a lot of stuff and you kind of know a little bit more behind the scenes, you're like, I'm cool. Like, it's all good. You know what? You'll figure it out and keep having fun with the chase and, you know, God bless you, you know? And so I like that you were kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to do it that way. This is the way I want to do it. It's very long game mentality.
Yeah.
But it wins every time. And that's the part that people don't get. I'm like, yeah, if you don't compromise the short-term values, your long game run is beautiful. And when you start to really hit even the slightest part of that stride or momentum on the way up, and you're kind of having fun laying, like, you know, like Will Smith said, like laying one brick at a time, and that compound effect starts happening, you're like, this is fun. And the other point that you brought up, you know, building that own audience online. I'm sorry, I don't have to do it any of your guys' way. I have my audience, and that's a community, and that's it. So, you know, you don't have to welcome me to the table. I'll bring the table, and I'll bring everybody around the table the way I want to. And I think that's the beautiful part about the time we're living in, that the walls are coming down, and, you know, the politics are still happening. But, you know, I almost urge everybody, I'm like, I can do less than you, make more, or have more, like, or have more fun with it as well, or have more control over all of it with less, just, you know, because of not having to play the politics or, you know, other things that come with it. So I like that you brought that up. It's very, very, you know, smart.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and it sucks that, like, to put it in this way, because a lot of people would never say this, but I honestly had to take the business part and the career part out of it mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, obviously this is a business, but, you know, like,
Yeah.
it is, but I have to love and enjoy what I do first, you know?
Yes.
So if such and such song doesn't get however many streams or however many numbers, and you're this various label or booking agent, and you don't see value in me because of whatever numbers,
Mm-hmm.
like, I have to really, like, work on not letting that affect me, because for a time, and I would say over the past decade, that's all that's mattered to people. How
Mm-hmm.
many followers you have, what is your this, what is your that.
Just fake.
It has nothing to do with my talent. It has nothing
Right.
to do with the long list of experience that you just read in the beginning of this interview. Nobody cares about that. But that's what I was taught through all the festivals and all the panels and all the things that I've been to. That's what I was taught was important, to build these relationships, to have all these experiences or whatever. And then all of a sudden that rug is pulled from under you, where that doesn't matter at all. It's all about popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a, you know, chicken chasing the egg type of thing, because you have to have visibility to get popular. You know, it doesn't really happen, you know, how it seemed seamlessly during a period of time where you had someone who co-signed you, or you were put on a big platform. And if you were good, that there's your fan base, right? Now it's all these other things into play. There's TikTok and all these things that we have to learn to live with. But for me, I have to just take, if I think about always trying to get money and make money, which was what drove me in before, that's where I started to learn to not love this anymore, you know? So I'm still in the position where I'm trying to find other things that I have maybe a semi-interest, that I have a hobbyist mentality about, that can keep a roof over my head. So the music part, the thing that I love, can remain something that I love and not be chasing, you know, a business aspect of it. I'm always going to be business savvy, but doing things in the only strategic way about business has made a lot of artists opportunists in a negative
Mm-hmm.
way, or
Mm-hmm.
liars and manipulators, because it's, you know, it's survival of the fittest. We're all doing things. You don't even realize that you're playing chess with people's lives and their careers.
Yeah.
And when you realize, oh, I didn't really want to do that. I didn't really even want to talk to this person. I didn't even really want to work with this person. I didn't even really want to be on this show or this interview. It's like, you're being just as fake as you're accusing everybody else to be, right? And that's the quote unquote business, but I can decide and choose not to participate in that. And if that means I get less bread, or if I'm less known, at least at the end of the day, I'll be happy and not have a whole lot of regrets, you know, through I would say a prime part of my career of just doing a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't want to do, you know?
You know, the tortoise and the hare is always applicable in every generation, in every way possible. And the tortoise always wins. And it's like lesser known, lesser known, lesser known, lesser known, lesser known, lesser known. And then like it's an end, the thick skin learned along the way, and the humbling and humility allows the preparation for when this does start to happen, the vibe isn't lost.
Right.
The long gamers play a way different game. And when you bring up like the followers and the likes, and you know, it was interesting to watch that the rug pull And first of all, because I'm also a digital strategist by trade, I was like, oh no, like so those numbers are fake. And it was crazy that people were like, well, what are your numbers? I'm like, and even with my other account, with my numbers were high. They're like, is that all? I'm like, did you get 130,000 followers from like all organic, no bots? And like, well, it's just that we're looking at this. I'm like, you don't even know this world. Like, you don't even understand how it even works. I'm like, this is actually also my background. And I did it for myself finally, instead of other brands, you know? Right. And so they just didn't understand. And they were like, well, we look at this with 1 million or even like podcast episodes. And I'd always, early on, I loved it because, you know, people be like, well, you know, we're not really sure. I'm like, that's no problem. They're like, oh, are you sure? And like, oh, absolutely. Like my audience, like they're my audience, they're my community. So if you're not wanting to do it, the vibe can't be there for the community. And they look at me like PR people and all these other people before the show got really big. And even then I'm like, you know, honestly, I don't know if you're a fit. And they look at me like, you're telling me that so-and-so is not a fit. I'm like, no, I actually don't think they're a fit for the audience at all. Right. You know, so the more that they play their rules, the less I want it, the less I want to be a part of it. Like, you know, and that's, and the culture of more. And that's also why we are about to hit a renaissance and what's actually shifting into micro communities, discords, blockchain, NFTs, like, cause it's like, this got so manipulated and worn down and, you know, pumped up and created a whole culture that created a lot of issues. Inauthenticity. And authenticity is a long game. But I also I think it's very appropriate and cool of you to bring that up about there are times you can feel lonely when you're doing it the right way. Because you'll see people, it's funny, one minute people are looking at, wow, Lyric, you're amazing. And then they surpass you doing the games. And then, you know, they look at you like, oh, Lyric, you're cool. You need to catch up. And I'm like, excuse me, you know, like I'm an OG. I started in 12, you know, 11. Just go along, pup. You'll be all right. Like and sure enough, if you play a long game, you also learn empathy, and they always come full circle. And I've actually had people come back years later, be like, you knew, didn't you? I'm like, of course I knew, you know, but it's gonna be okay. Like, and they're like, man, I missed that. I was like, nah, we all make mistakes anyways. Like, I'm constantly learning. So I think the cool heads prevail is what happens, and time. And so where you're at is beautiful because your community knows exactly what you're doing. And that is a very refreshing thing in a world where people are disconnected from the very people they idolize, right? Yeah. To you, they're completely connected. Like, I like how she's doing things. I know exactly where she's going, even if and by the way, even when you don't fully know where you're going, I've had that with my own audience. The audience knows, like, they're like, I think you need to consider this. And I'm like, that's the 5th person that said that this week. You know what I'm like? Yeah. God, like, I also very spiritual. I'm like, God, you're beautiful. Like, thank you for speaking to me through people, even about myself, if I can't even see it, you know?
Absolutely.
So now, like, what's been going on, like, the last, I know it's been a interesting few years. So, but for you in the creative aspect, like, what do you think you're having the most fun with right now?
Good question. I like to be asked what's making me have fun. So recently, which I believe is how you even got acquainted with me, is I've taken DJing a lot more seriously. I've always kind of fickled with it. It just looked too hard in the beginning. Like, I was like, I got to worry about these raps. I'm not about to be starting to DJ. But the pandemic really made me step my gear up as far as just buying stuff and practicing and wanting to, again, expand, not be one dimensional, not be only known for only doing one thing. And it always kind of came quick to me, but it really came quick because of the repertoire of music that I have and the way I know music and the way I've been hearing music. The compliments I've been getting from fellow DJs as well has just been so empowering and reassuring, and it's been a lot of fun because it's stress-free. Thank you, Orlove, for being stress-free. Putting me on some gigs and just letting me just play some jams and have fun in a time that was just so unprecedented and we didn't even really know what was going on. I've really been having a lot of fun just learning something new, like a whole new playing field. Something I don't feel like I got this figured out. That jogs a curiosity in me, a childlike mentality that's kept me like, oh, let me practice this. Like, let me play some more. I've been having a lot of fun doing that. And hopefully some more gigs will come along. That the DJ world is just as competitive as being a MC artist, as I'm realizing that everybody's trying to DJ, especially recently. But it's been a lot of fun, the moments that I had, especially this past summer. I really, really enjoyed it. I love house music, and that's been really fun to play as well.
Mm.
I'm currently doing some tour dates and show dates with a good friend of mine, incredible, like, rock star artist, Kevin Ross. We have known each other for about 15 years, also another Berklee College of Music connection. And funny enough, you know how we met, he opened up for me. Not opened up, sorry. He sang background for me on a particular gig. And I was maybe about 17 years old. And he's already in college. So it's just funny how the world turns, because he's, you know, number one on the R&B charts, top 10 in Billboard R&B, you know, has been signed to Motown and is now completely independent and doing those type of numbers. And I just couldn't be any more proud of him, because I literally watched his whole journey and he's literally watched mine. And, you know, he gives me the reassurance, like, you know, Lyric, you've been independent all this time. I'm learning from you, like, just watching you do all of this and coming from a major, you know, I just thought you would be incredible, you know, to join me. And then I'm looking at him in awe, because he has the numbers and a solid fan base and, you know, just a songwriter and so accomplished. So that's fun to be doing something like that, like to be on stage, which is what I love to do more than anything, with a friend, not just a colleague, not just a, you know, a peer, another artist that's dope, like my actual friend who believes in me and wants me to win. That's been fun, you know, even though the shows haven't been, you know, 1000% perfect. Like, we're all learning through the process of, you know, booking and sound checks and just all those things. When you're dealing with more than one artist, it's been learning for him, learning for me, and I'm having fun through the learning instead of it stressing me out, you know? So it's been really cool, like, just expanding my fan base to a different demographic as well, R&B artists. And, you know, I'm known for being super boom bap and hip hop. And my music, especially this last album, has really progressed me to different ears and to a different sound. Even though it's still my sound, it's just the sound that people haven't heard yet. That's always been there, you know.
Well, and it gets to evolve, right? It gets to evolve. I mean,
it was time for this era has been time for my fan base and even new fans to just see all that I have to offer. So not only with this album, but also with the shows, like, I'm DJing, I'm playing drums, I'm singing, I'm rapping, I'm doing all those things on the shows. Like, that's fun to finally be like, finally, y'all can see what I can do, instead of just, she's only this, she's only that, and being felt so limited as well. So those are the two that have just literally been lighting me up, especially coming out of such a lull of questioning myself, questioning where I want to go next, creatively, musically. I'm still having a lot of questions, still going through an internal shift right now of where I want to be and what I want to do. But the moment, I'm very much in the moment right now, and just letting God lead me to what's next, and trying to listen to what's happening at the time.
I think it's the culmination of all of the individual experiences and focuses that have now compounded into the fun that it, like, because those individual times you're like, am I crazy? Like, I know I am not fucking crazy. I know I'm not, but I feel like I am, because, like, everybody's looking at me like, well, not the audience, but like a lot of people are like, why would you do that? I'm like, am I crazy? And then after a while, you kind of find your stride and you're like, I'm not. I'm ahead. But it doesn't feel like it, because if we go by metrics, I'm not yet. Right. And I like when you were bringing up about Kevin Ross and you're saying, you know, with a major, but I'm an independent. But the majors watch the independents in a lot of ways. And we're also seeing a huge, you know, with a lot of majors being like, why are they so free over there? And you're like, well, I'd take a look at your contract if I were you and how you're set up. And, you know, and Russ and Illmind noticed that from the very start. They're like, I'm doing this all on my own. completely with just a couple people. I'm going to own my masters. I'm going to own my publishing. I'm going to experiment this way. I'm going to experiment that way. And it's me and my audience, you know? And then I also like the fact that, you know, when you're saying about with house, it's interesting because like when I was in Europe for a while, hearing like lounge where house and hip hop would come together, you know, or acid jazz and like, I mean, I'm going back to like early 2000s and in the even mid 2000s, but it was cool to hear how you can make them also come together if you want to, you know, in a lot of different ways. But then house in general just got such a vibe. Like, and it's interesting because I started so heavy soul, hip hop and R&B and rap, but it was interesting once I started getting glimpses in different seasons of house to, you know, how it's evolved. It's an interesting, it's amazing. It's amazing to get, like, it gets you into such a, like a rhythm of where you can be so dialed in. So I think it's cool that you're able to do that. But again, it becomes a culmination of like, I didn't know Lyric could do all those things. I'm like, yeah, that a case could be made for, you know, decade 1, decade 2, decade 3, right? It gives you that multi-dimension is what wins this long game where you get to have all this fun. Imagine like the people who were singularly focused. It's okay to be singularly focused, but on something that is controlled by a lot of other people, they get kind of to a place of either burnout or like their starting over is different than our starting over. Their starting over is like scratch. Ours is like learn it, compound it, piece it all together. They're still learning it, still bringing in more. It's life. It's the process of building a life. So sometimes I look at majors and I'm like, what's going to happen when they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, and they're like, what do you want to do? I have no idea, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's very real. I mean, a lot of people like to throw, I mean, everything you just said is valid as far as like, you know, it's a long haul, it's a long game in general, right? But my personality is like, I get bored easily, right? So if you stick with something long enough, yeah, maybe I'll see some results in when I'm 38 to 40, but who's to say I still want to do that, right? But then the fear of mine is just like, okay, I've been working at this, right? Am I still going to have the same bright-eyed, bushy-tailed intent that I had when I was 21? Because that was, you know, there was all this intention and all these dreams and all these things that I wanted to do. And, you know, I don't want to burn out. I don't want to be exhausted because I did all this hard work. I want to at least live enjoy the fruit of my labor when I still have the energy. And that's some things that artists, executives, whatever, that we don't talk about. It's like, yeah, we like to speak positively about, okay, keep going. But then once everything happens, are you able to enjoy it? Like, are you able to sit back and like have fun still, or are you tired from all of that? So part of me does wish things either happen sooner or start now. Because I know I have dreams and goals for my 40s, dreams and goals for my 50s. I'm not trying to be, you know, not a struggle artist, but like at this same level of grind per se in 10 years, just for the sake of let's keep going, let's keep doing it, because you never know how close you are. But at the same time, I do have to affirm shit. My own album title is Closer Than They Appear, right? So as contradictory as I might be in this very sentence, it's like I still have to realize there are so many things that I probably don't even know that are tangible, that are right in front of me, that are close, that I got to keep going. Hopefully, I just got to pray to God that I'll have the strength and the energy to enjoy it maybe differently than I would have, you know, when I was a young adult, 21, 22, or even 16, 17. Those goalposts has changed dramatically, but maybe the new goalposts I have will still be there in this different world, different industry, and different environment. Hopefully I'll have new joys and new things that I'll be chasing as well, you know? So that's just my prayer. And, you know, just being transparent, like it's literally a balancing act of, I'm tired, but I got to keep going because you never know how close you are, you know, constantly weighing on you. You don't want to quit. You want to make sure the people that have been in your corner are proud of you. People who've been supporting you all these years, like that's what keeps me going. I don't want to let people down who've been supporting me all these years, seeing the things that I probably couldn't see or don't see, right? But I have to understand that I have other things to offer how do I fit that into my dreams and my plans as well? What does that look like? I'm going through that right now. Just what does the future look like for me?
Quitting is not an option when you
Ah.
well, it never really is, obviously, but when you get this far down the road of the long game, go back to what? I mean, all these experiences, all the culmination,
Right.
and the people that believe in you, people that believe in us, the people that believe, like, they're a lifeline. There's times that I'm like, why, God, like, really? And like that, a message comes through a DM, like, I get like 50, 60 of them a day, but sometimes there's some that really sticks out. You're like, you're like, I hear it. Thank you. I got it. But I want to give you my opinion about your 40s are going to be incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's a different energy. It's a different vibe. It's a different, oh, I get it. Well, I heard this a long time ago from Kabbalah. It's taking experience and turning into wisdom. How would I do that differently? How would I have more fun? How would I get into the garage and get under the hood and build the Ferrari myself, or build the car myself, like in a different way, because I know better. I've seen a lot. I can apply, like, it's application of the experiences, and it has you move differently and have a lot more fun. And the momentum is crazy, even if it still has elements of the old energy, because you're also not necessarily playing the game of everybody else too, which weirdly enough kind of, also puts you ahead. And so even the majors start to ask, like, what do you know? And you're like, what do you want to know? And they're like, something. I'm like, maybe. So there's a shift, there's a dynamic shift that happens, I believe, during that time, that I think you'll probably find very incredible. And it's very expansive of the culmination of your experiences. So it ends up very good. Just throwing that out there for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll have a conversation in a few years. I'll be like, how'd it turn out? How's it turning out so far?
Yeah.
And I guarantee it. I guarantee you'll be like, I got you. Like, here's what just happened. I'm like, of course, So
I hear you. I feel that way about my 30s.
Right.
Tell me about this era.
Right.
So
yeah. It came on strong. It was about 2 years ago. It was right before my father passed, and he was a mentor and like a best friend to me. And it was about 3 months before I was 39. I'm like, what is this? And what is this that's coming? I could feel it. It was such an energy, a seasonal change, but a different seasonal change. And now it makes sense, and he's with me every day. It's crazy. I actually am working with my father daily, and it's a very interesting dynamic, because it's very different when they're in the soul versus a physical form. But question for you, what do you have coming up that you're excited about? The touring is one of them. Do you have some other things that are coming up?
Nothing specific. I'm in a creative just download space.
Perfect.
Where I'm just sponging, and reflecting on what I want to do next, especially after this recent project. A lot of eyes and ears are on me. So I want to make sure what I do next isn't just trying to like throw something out because people are watching, but it's the next move is the next move. Like there's people paying attention. So I just want to make sure that it's very much me, that there's money involved, that I can find some, that I can get, just try to find the right strategic ways, so whether it's a grant or advance or whatever, to really do an incredible project.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know, it might be a house project, might be Afrobeat, or it might be whatever. It might be a whole R&B album. I'm just ready I know that whatever it is going to be extremely different, but it's still going to be me and it's going to be refreshing. So I'm just downloading the energy in that environment right now to fill me up for what is next musically.
Mm.
I know just in general, I'm still interested in like speaking engagements and teaching and all of that. I'm looking for new opportunities with that, whether it's different colleges or panels, festivals, and obviously still trying to perform, still trying to DJ. So I'm in the seeking platforms phase. I think I'm always going to be in that space, but definitely just seeking other ways for visibility to let people know about the album and let people know all my different talents and interests. And yeah, just, hopefully me and Kev have more shows, or I have more shows as well going into 2022. 2022 and more DJ gigs. I know that it's just been confirmed that I'm going to be doing one of the Panic in LA shows coming up in March. So if you're in LA, definitely come to that. I think it's Goody Mob, me, and another artist that slips my mind, but that's going to be incredible because that'll be my first show in LA in years, like 2019, I'll say. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what 2022 has in store on stage more than anything. And I'm sure there'll be some more music as well.
Incredible. Yeah, that's that Panic in LA is gonna be
Because I went to the Rakim and Jazzy Jeff one, and I know Jazzy Jeff well. I'd never met Rakim, but they're literally like my two favorites. My favorite DJ and my favorite rapper together was just sensory overload for me. So I love that Panic in LA is combining just genre bending and blending, because that's literally like my whole aesthetic. So I just am excited to do all the things on Panic and be free. Any platform where I can just do anything I want musically is just
and be free, as you said. You know, what like digital assets? Where can everybody find you online, social, website, everything, wherever, everywhere? Where can everybody find you?
Yes, you can find me anywhere at Lyric Jones. On Instagram, on Twitter, it's literally at Lyric Jones. It's my website is the Lyric Jones, THE lyricjones.com. And that's honestly where you can find all things me. Videos, photos, bios, upcoming shows, content, all those things are on my website. And if you forget, my social handles, there are also links on that as well there, my YouTube, SoundCloud, all of that, Spotify. Please follow me on Spotify. Please follow me on Bands in Town, because when these shows come up, I update them on Bands in Town, and then you can find out where I'm at. It's much easier to reach you guys there than on Instagram, because you may or may not see the flyer. So follow me on Bands in Town. Right. Follow me on Bands in Town. My live show is like no other. So I really want you guys to see me live and come back. So The Lyric Jones is the best place to find me, and then you can go down a rabbit hole from there.
I'm looking forward to seeing you live. Thank you for being on the show, by the way. Like I said from the very beginning, you're my spirit animal. I totally get your background. And I'm telling you right now, you're doing it right. I mean, I don't like to tell people right or wrong or anything, because everybody has their own path. But I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Like the way you're doing it it's just long. But man, it's so good. It's so good. It's just that. It's just the in between, but it definitely hits a beautiful stride, and I'm there with you. I'm there with you constantly. I really
charming in the encouragement. I really do.
Yeah, well, and I don't know. You know it, like you know it intuitively. You know it. Once you've been in the game long enough and you've seen everything, especially behind the scenes, you know it. I posted this on my stories the other day, because some people have actually asked recently. They're like, what do you know? like fans or followers or whatever. They're like, what is it because I've always remained very independent versus like all these different circles that exist. And like, what is it And I'm like, enough to know and build and trust myself. Let's just leave it at that, because we will never, it doesn't matter what I've seen or what I know, but I know enough to know that I'm doing it right this way. And that's really where I think you're at when you've been in it long enough. What it's just, it's just taming the ego, right? Or taming our and using this as we get further along and then have more fun. But you know what you're doing, So, thank you so much for being on the show, and for everybody listening. At Lyric Jones, LYRICJONES on Insta. You can also go to thelyricjones.com, and that'll link to everything, including Bands in Town. Sometimes social gets a little weird and quirky with the algorithm. Go to Bands in Town or go to thelyricjones.com and get to everything, all Lyric Jones. I don't need to say it, but I am going to say it. Just do it. Just follow. Just subscribe, follow, support. It means more than all of you guys know. And the relationship is a two-way relationship. We don't put stuff out simply because we're like, hey, let me put out really cool stuff. I want to express myself. I want to have the relationship, and I lyric is that way. So like, reach out. You can DM, be appropriate, just like, but like, because she's busy. But for everybody, listening, definitely check her out. And also thank you for tuning in to On the Top of the Covers. It means a lot to us and the movement and the contribution of, music culture. Also, all the feedback has been incredible. Thank you for giving us 5-star reviews. Please continue to give us 5-star reviews because we're still in the algorithm world. Apple likes that. And, as I mentioned earlier, you guys can all follow us on all major platforms at We Are Orlove or at Matt Gottesman. Guys, I answer every text and DM. I keep getting tests from all of you every single week. People try. They're like, I'm just seeing if you're going to answer. And I do. If you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeart, all of those, you can watch this on our Orlove YouTube channel. Please subscribe there. And, leave us comments. We answer those too. We try to constantly embody community. It's a very big deal to us. So we love and appreciate all you guys. We're out.